First of all, I would like to thank all of you who have made this occasion possible, beginning with those who had the idea of founding the Sue Foundation to help health and education in Burma. And of course, the people from the East-West Center and from various organizations who have all rallied around this very simple but very necessary cause. I first started thinking about health and education some years back, almost 2 decades back, when there was a lot of talk by the then government of this country on the natural resources of this country. It was in effect, they were in effect saying that Burma was a land so rich in natural resources that nobody could stop them from being rich and wealthy. And it occurred to me then that our greatest, most important resource was our people. And without nurturing our people, we would never be the kind of country we wish to be. Natural resources in the form of minerals, in the form of precious stones, in the form of teak, all these are nothing compared with the capacity of our people to build their nation in the shape which they dream of. So that is when I started thinking about health and education as extremely important, because these were essential to the nurturing of our people, our most precious natural resource. But my subject today is not really about health and education, but about the challenges of a free press in an emerging and established democracies. This is because one of the greatest changes that have come about in this country over the last 3 years is the greater freedom of the press. Many people have talked about the amazing changes that have taken place in this country. And I would like to say quite frankly that these changes have been not all that great and not all that amazing. But there is one thing that none of us can deny. There is greater freedom of the press. Now, when people talk about freedom in the political sense, I've always said, you must never separate freedom from responsibility. If you talk about greater freedom, you must talk about greater responsibility as well. And this applies to the media, to the press. Greater freedom demands greater responsibility if this freedom is not to be misused. The great majority of us know how important a free press is. Without a free press, we cannot really lay the foundations of a healthy democracy, because without a free press, those in authority will be able to get away with many things which they should not be allowed to get away with. That is to say, unless there is a free press to check those who are in power, we will not be able to defend the rights and freedoms of the people. But at the same time, this press has to be aware of not just of its great power and influence, but of the great responsibility that it bears towards the building of a new nation, which is in effect what we are trying to do. We are trying to build a new nation. We are trying to build a nation that is centered on the will of the people. When our fathers fought for independence back in the 1930s and 1940s, what they asked for was the right to shape their own destiny. This is the right which our people are still asking for. They want the right to be able to shape their own destiny. But if you have the right to shape your own destiny, you also have to make sure that you are shaping it in the right way. And for that, information is important. Correct information, accurate information, necessary information is important if you are to shape your nation in the way it should be shaped, not just for you or for a generation, but for generations to come. Building a new nation means laying the foundations for a new kind of society, for, in fact, a new kind of culture. I've often said that what we are trying to do is not to establish democracy, but to build up a democratic culture, to make sure that the culture of democracy takes root in our country. And then a free and responsible press has an extremely important part to play. I need hardly tell you what the dangers of an unfree press are. If there is no free press to let the people as well as the government know what is going on in our country and what needs to be changed and what needs to be improved and corrected, those in power will become complacent. As it is, I think they're already too complacent for their own good and for the good of the nation. So we must all make sure that those who take on the responsibility of government understand that it is a responsibility, not a privilege. And there the press must help. A free press should be able to point out to the government what their responsibilities are, and also to the people, not just what their rights are, but what their responsibilities are as well. It is one of my greatest concerns that people should not look upon democracy as a system that gives out unlimited rights to them, but which does not demand equal responsibility back. And there again, the press must teach us to understand what democratic responsibilities are by themselves exercising responsibility. If people ask me, do we have absolute freedom of the media in this country, I would say no, for the simple reason that we do not have, as yet, the kind of laws that will truly defend and promote a free press. But at the same time, I would also say that we do not have enough media responsibility either. This is because for decades we did not have a free press in this country. We did not have a free media. Journalists were not free to train themselves, to improve their capacity. So we have, in fact, a group of young journalists today, very enthusiastic, very committed, but actually without sufficient training. We need to train the younger members of our media that they might be able to take on the tremendous responsibilities that lie on their shoulders. Everybody knows that the media is not free from economic and business concerns. In order to run a paper, you do need money. I can tell you that because the NLD has not been able to bring out a daily paper for this very simple reason: we don't have enough money. Now, I'm not ashamed of that. Actually, I think I would be ashamed to be very wealthy in a country like Burma at a time like this, because the great majority of our people are poor. So the NLD is not ashamed to be known as a poor political party. Poor in material terms, but I hope and believe rich in spirit and commitment. And this is what we want from our new free press. A commitment to the kind of values that will make our country the kind of country that all of us can be proud of. Not just all of us who are living now, but generations to come. These days, I have had to repeat fairly often a quotation, and I forget from whom it comes. I'm trying to remember, but I just can't get my memory to work that way, that a politician thinks of the next elections and a statesman thinks of the next generation. These days, people are over-concerned with the 2015 elections. We all have to remember that the 2015 elections is just a stepping stone in the long journey that lies ahead of our country. And we have to think of the next generation and generations to come. And we would like our press, our media, to help us in this quest to lay the foundations for a society, for a nation that is not just for us who are alive today, but for generations to come. In a sense, I think I can say that I'm very ambitious. I would like Burma not just to be a success of as a nation, but I would like this country to be a success, a triumph, a beacon of hope for the international community, for the human race. We want to succeed in a way in which other people have not been able to succeed before. And this is because, I say this not because I think that the Burmese are better than other peoples, but because we have been left far behind in the race towards development during the last 4 or 5 decades. Now that we have been given a chance to join that race, we want to do it in such a way that we will be helping not just ourselves, but other human beings as well. We want to make sure that the fact that we have been left behind has taught us the kind of lessons that will help us to move forward as few countries have been able to do in the past. And again, there we need the help of a free and responsible press. These days, if you bring out a journal, a magazine, a newspaper, you have to be able to sell it, unless somebody is doling out money in unlimited quantities, and that gets very suspicious. You wonder why anybody will be doling out money in unlimited quantities for any journal or magazine. So people have to make sure that whatever it is they are trying to sell is saleable, and that often affects the quality of these media products, these media publications. We have a very good Buddha saying, which I like, which says that when you say something, you must make sure, first of all, that it is the truth. And secondly, it has got to be the truth, but it has to be beneficial. It has to have good results. But then, what you say or what you write, if you're a journalist or a writer, may be true and may be beneficial, but it may be either unacceptable to people or acceptable. It may be an unpleasant truth or a pleasant truth. And then you have to think, you have to consider all these 4 points before you decide whether or not you should say something. Is it truthful? Is it beneficial? Will it be pleasing to people, or will it be acceptable to people? Or will it be unacceptable to people? Will it be unbearable to people? But in the end, I think 3 is enough for us. If it is truthful, if it is beneficial, then whether or not it's acceptable or unacceptable, we have to talk about it, we have to write about it. And that's what the NLD has been doing for many, many years and getting into a lot of trouble for it. But I think it's worth it. So I would like to say to those who have taken up the challenge of being part of a free and, I must still add, responsible media, please make sure that what you write is not just truthful, but is of benefit to our people, to our country, and to the human race at large. Because there is a lot of gossip writing, you all know that, and I think there's a lot of writing which hurts people and really doesn't do anybody any good at all. It may be the truth. For example, scurrilous gossip about this celebrity or that celebrity. I don't see what good it does anybody. I suppose it helps to sell whichever newspaper or journal is concerned. But I do want our people to set high standards for themselves. Call it idealistic, if you like. I don't think there's anything wrong with idealism, provided you make sure that you also have a practical side that helps you to turn these ideals into a way of improving the lives of our people. So, as in conclusion, I would like to say the challenges of a free press in an emerging or established democracies, the challenges of any free press today is responsibilities. How much responsibility are you prepared to take on as somebody who's part of a free media? How much responsibility are you prepared to take on for the betterment not just of the society in which you live, but of the world in which we all live? Thank you.
I'm Soyanai for Irori magazine. I'm a senior reporter of the Irori magazine, and I'm currently participating in the East West Central Jefferson Fellowship 2014. I would like to know, just to mention about the lack of the capacity of young journalists. What is your opinion on that? Do you think they have been under the previous military regime for a long time, so it is because of that, or what is your opinion? Thank you.
They need training, they need opportunities, they have a lot of potential. And I'm very heartened by the young journalists I've met, but certainly they have not had sufficient training. For example, we have very few specialist journalists in established democracies. Often big newspapers would have, for example, the business correspondents and the sports correspondents, and they would even have parliamentary correspondents and so on. But we don't have that kind of system here in this country yet. And I think that's very important for us to train our young journalists, because the potential is there. And I think we've got to, this is why I mentioned the training. It's linked to what the Sue Foundation is trying to do. It's education. They need to be given better opportunities to broaden their horizons and to learn how to be the very best journalist possible.
My name is Moeed Ali Jaffrey. I'm from Pakistan. I'm currently with the Jefferson Fellows once again, like Soyanai is. You've mentioned the top challenge to freedom of press as being responsibility. The point is that once that is practiced, the biggest challenge becomes the security of journalists, mostly in developing and democracies in transition. How do you believe the governments should tackle that? Should there be regulation for the security of journalists in democracies in transition, where reporting the absolute truth and the beneficent truth is a challenge to their own lives in itself?
This is why I say that freedom and responsibility have to go in tandem. You can't just have one without the other. And responsible journalists who are telling the truth must be assured of their wisdom, of the freedom to be able to tell the truth in security. So that's partly to do with legislation, but good legislations are not sufficient. There has to be rule of law. These good laws would have to be enforceable. The kind of good laws that will defend and protect those journalists who are telling the truth that is necessary for our people to know and that is necessary for the progress of our country. So these go together. This is why I say freedom and responsibility. Freedom has to be assured by the laws, by the system, by the administration, and responsibility is something that has to be learned by those who are engaged in the process. On both sides of the divide, I mean, the government has to be responsible, and so do other sectors, including the media, who have to deal with the government.
Hi, it's Jim Brook. I'm the new editor of the Cambodia Daily. My question is about your Muslim minority in the West. We know that Burma is a multi-ethnic nation. How do you see the violence and the problems that are happening in the western part of your country with the Muslim minority?
When you talk about violence, you have to talk about the rule of law. I've talked about it very often, but people are not interested because it's not interesting enough to make the headlines. To me, rule of law is an extremely interesting subject, as interesting as it is important. But I don't think it is to many people. When I say that the first thing you have to deal with regard to the situation in the Rakhine is rule of law, then people say, I've said nothing about the situation, because for them, talking about a rule of law is tantamount to talking about nothing. They don't think it's interesting, but it's absolutely essential. It's basic. If we want to resolve problems that are created through acts of violence, we have to make sure that necessary actions are taken to ensure that these acts of violence do not take place. And that's rule of law. In any society, when there are tensions between different communities, you have to, first of all, ensure security. People who are not insecure will not be ready to sit down to talk to one another to sort out their problems. So if you ask me what the solution to the problem in the Rakhine, I would say simply, I don't know what the solution is completely, but one essential part of it is the establishment of rule of law.
Ani minglawa kemya, chano during language ma level media group ka. Ani minglen nakulang major mara kemya.
Tuku weno, ya tuku.
Okay, as ani freedom of press loပြောတဲ့အခါမှာဒီတာဝန်ယူမှုတွေအကြောင်းလေးပြောတဲ့အခါမှာအများဖြင့်လူတွေမြင်တာသတင်းမီဒီယာဆိုရင်ဒီစာနယ်ဇင်းဒီ paper နဲ့ထုတ်တဲ့မီဒီယာတွေလို့ပဲမြင်ပါတယ်ခင်ဗျာဒါပေမဲ့အခုကျွန်တော်တို့စီမှာဖြစ်နေတာဒီ website တွေပေါ်မှာ social network တွေပေါ်မှာဟိုဒီတစ်ဖက်နဲ့တစ်ဖက်ပြင်းထန်ပုတ်ခတ်မှုတွေကဒီမုံပွားမှုတွေဖြစ်တဲ့အကြောင်းရင်းတွေတစ်ခုဖြစ်နေပါတယ်အဲ့တော့ဒီ social network တွေ website တွေလိုမျိုး online media တွေရဲ့တာဝန်ယူမှုနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ဗာများမြင်ပါလဲခင်ဗျာ
He was talking about what appears online, the fact that I'd been talking about media responsibility, but we can talk about this with regard to journals, magazines, etc., to the printed media. But what do we do about what goes online? I said there's not much we can do about it, apart from fostering a sense of responsibility in individuals. Because we don't know who writes these things, and quite often the stories that you come across are total fabrications. And we just have to adopt this policy that we can't respond to each and every one of them, because anybody can write anything they like, and we just don't have the time to go around refuting every little bit of fiction that is put online. So we have to foster individual responsibility as part of our democratic culture.
Being chair from the University of Hong Kong, you talk about the freedom and responsibility. Do you think the international media has been responsible? And what would you want them to do? What is your message to the top editors of the international media?
I think it's very difficult to talk about the international media as a whole. I think a lot of people are aware of which are the responsible and respected papers and journals. So they have their own standards to maintain, and they do try to maintain them. So I can't talk about the international media as a whole. It's just the media anywhere. There are those who are proud to be responsible journalists. They are those who take their work very seriously, and they are those who feel that there is something they can do for society. But there's no doubt about it, there are those for whom it's just a money-making process, and they will do anything that will sell their products and make their business more lucrative. So that's human nature. So it will be this issue of media freedom and responsibility will never come to an end, because that's human nature. Human nature is such that we will have to keep facing problems like this again and again, but continue to try to resolve them to the best of our ability.
Hi, I'm Victoria Kennedy, producer for CNN International. Question on social media. How can social media play a better role in the emergence of a free press in this country?
I don't think that the social media has any less responsibility than the official media, if you like. When it doesn't have any less responsibility. It also must bear responsibility for whatever news, whatever information it circulates, and make sure that it is correct, that is to say truthful, and that it is beneficial for society. Because I assume that social media is there to promote the cause of a better society. That is to promote a greater inclusiveness and greater equality and greater justice in society. So they must have their own principles and their own goals, and their work should be shaped in accordance with those principles and goals. But I don't think they're any less responsible than the formal media.
Okay, we want to thank Dato. She has to stay on stage here. because there's a presentation to the Sioux Foundation.